Hey, good morning, everyone. This is a video demo um, on assignment number 4, and it's going to show you. In this demo, I'm going to show you how to create an artificial zoom on a still photo to kind of give an illusion of a 3D effect. So, in this assignment, we're going to create a 3-layered artificial zoom in effect on a scanned or snapped landscape photo. So, first thing I want to show you is some of the photos that I found and would like to use. So if we go over to, oh, wrong one. Let's go over to my pictures. There we go. And in there, I found a couple of photos that would work really well. Here are some of them here. It's a nice shot. And basically, what you're looking for are 3 essential areas for your layers. So you've got your foreground, which is the ground that I'm standing on here. You can see my shadow there. You have a middle ground, which would be where the water and the dam are in that valley. And then you have a background, which we'll consider the sky, the background. So essentially, it should break down to about 3 layers. Um, so that's one, and then there are a couple more here. This is another one that could work. You have the ground, that's the foreground. Middle ground are the hills, and then finally the sky can be the background. AT&T Park here would be good. Again, you have the stadium here with the people for your foreground. Middle ground would be the wall of the stadium back to the horizon line. And then finally, you have the sky as the background. So there's some decent shots here. Here's another one from Hawaii that I thought would work. Actually, here's the original. So that one's really good too. So that one would be nice and easy. It has nice, pretty smooth lines for the most part. You've got your background, your middle ground, and your foreground right here. So with that, we'll use one of those photos to do this demo. Okay, so let me close all these out. And let's go ahead and go into After Effects. Okay, so we're in After Effects here, and so what we're going to do is create a new project, new composition. Your width is going to be 320 pixels. So if you need to change these numbers, just uncheck lock aspect ratio. Make sure that's not checked. Put in 320 for your width, 240 for your height. Your frame rate's going to be 30 frames a second. And finally, our duration, we just needed to change it to 5 seconds, 0 frames there. Okay, so once you do that, click OK. And for this, I found a couple of great photos that I thought would work really well for this. Essentially, you want um, 3 layers. So, looking at a photo like this would be a good one. This landscape has basically 3 layers, right? You have your sky or your background. Your second layer would be your middle ground or your valley here, your canyon. And the third would be the front layer or the floor. We'll call it the foreground, so to speak. So that would be a good photo to use. Here are some other ones. Here's one of AT&T Park, right? So you could have the spectators in the stadium as the foreground. Middle ground would be the ocean to the wall here of AT&T, and the background could be the sky, right? That would be a very intricate one to do, though. So you've got a lot of lines there to draw around. And something like this one would be good too. You know, basically your foreground is where I'm standing. You have Goodwin Dam here, up to Tulloch Lake, up in this direction, and then finally you have the sky there. So that's a nice one too. Again, it comes down to about 3 layers. So whatever you choose, your photo will be much bigger than 320 by 240. So we'll have to resize it. So let's just grab this one since this is a nice big photo. And I've been using this one a lot. You can see once you bring your photo in, it's, oh my goodness, right? It's zoomed in unbelievably so. So essentially what I can do is resize this. Probably the easiest way is to go up to layer, transform, scale. Okay, and then right here, instead of percentage of source for our units, let's just deal with pixels. So let's change that to pixels. Make sure your chain is unlinked here, so click that until the line goes through the chain. And now I can put in whatever number I want for my width, and then also for my height, right? 240. Click OK, and notice there now the photo fits into my scheme here, so that looks pretty good. It's a little stretched, so I could go outside of the borders here just by simply clicking and dragging it this way. And then I could even move this over too if I want to bring some of the tree into it. So maybe, well, let's see. Well, we got to go up with it too to make sure it exceeds the border there. Something like that, but we also want the foreground in there as well. Let me zoom out here just a little bit here. Hold down Alt on my zoom tool. There we go. And then we want to bring, let's go back to our selection tool. We want to bring this down as well, maybe, or yeah, something like that. So you can see how the photo goes outside the border of the canvas, but that's okay. We can ignore that if we do this right, okay? So there's the image that we're going to be working with right here. And so what we're going to do is zoom in one more time on this thing. I'm going to grab my magnifying glass again. I'm going to grab my hand grabber next up here in my toolbar. And we're going to we're going to turn this into 3 layers. We've got a sky layer or a background. We've got our middle ground or our valley. And then finally we've got the floor here, which is the foreground. Okay, so what we're going to do is take this layer, grab my selection tool again, click on the layer in the timeline once, and we're going to duplicate that. So Control D is your duplicate function. If you hit Control D twice, now we have 3 layers. Top layer I'm going to name background, so I right click on it, choose rename. We'll just call this back. Click on the second layer, right click, choose rename, call this middle. Then finally over here, and right click, rename, call that front or foreground, right? Okay, so we have 3 layers now. So the first layer that I'm going to concern myself with is right here, the background layer, okay? So I'm going to click on that layer, make sure it's selected. And then I'm going to draw a mask around the sky to keep the sky and mask out the other elements. And doing that, I'm just going to use the pen tool, right? So I'm going to click the pen tool up here. And I'm going to start that process. I'm going to do the hard part first and go around the tree. Again, I'm going to get as close as I can. But I can probably get away with being a little sloppy here, but I'm going to try. You remember, I can move these points too later. For example, let's say, oh, I accidentally clicked out there. Well, that's okay. Once this switches to the selection tool, you can just move it. And then once it goes back to the pen tool, you can continue on. So that's kind of nice. After Effects has some nice tools in place to keep your workflow going smoothly. And just take your time. You don't need to hurry this process. Okay, now we'll just go across here. And again, remember, you can always move these vertex points later. So don't stress if it's not perfect. You can always go back and make your final adjustments, which is nice. So just go straight across there. You know, you can just kind of, once it turns to the pen, there we go. Let's just go straight across there and see if we can get away with that. A lot of times it's what you can get away with and fool the eye with. So as long as we go outside the border here, it's okay. We can crop the rest. It'll crop out the rest of the photo. We're going to go up here. Let's see. Again, we'll need to move this point up here to the top of the screen. Actually, let's grab the zoom. Let's zoom out on this thing. So Alt to, and notice there I wasn't at the top of the screen. So that's good to realize that. So sometimes it's okay or good to zoom out. Oops. And let's grab this key here. And let's move it up here. Then we can take this one and move it along there. And again, I'm just trying to barely exceed the border here so I get everything. Oops. Let's make sure we're still on track here. There we go. And then I can just go straight across here. Just do the whole thing. And then what we want to do is connect to this first point that we started, right? So once we draw a border around that, we can see if it worked by turning the eyeball off on the other two layers. And notice there, our mask for that layer is successful. So far it looks pretty good. I'll just leave that alone for now. And then the next thing we want to do is create a mask around the middle layer. So we're going to go to the middle. Now here's a trick that you might find useful. You can go over here to the back layer. Let's open up the masks here. Let's copy this mask. Control C. So I just selected masks underneath the layer. And let's go to middle and let's just choose Control V and see if that mask is on this layer now in the middle. And notice there it is, right? So what I did was I took the mask from this back layer or the first layer that I drew. I copied it by selecting masks underneath the layer. Control C, and then I go to the middle layer and just choose Control V, and notice there I pasted it. And what that allows me to do is keep this edge that I already drew. So now I only have to draw the edges around the sides and the bottom of this layer. So now that I've done that, so I'll go to my middle layer, click on my mask layer, and notice there we have mask 1 and mask 2. Okay, and so what we're going to do now is take these points that I've drawn, and we're just going to move them down. And then we can figure out our keyframes in between as we go along here. So notice that. That's really nice. So you've got your top one is already drawn, but now we have a bunch of points here that we've got to get figured out here. Okay, and that's fine. What we can do is move these down and move the other ones around that we've already created. There we go. And let's go ahead and take this one. We'll bring this one back over just to keep this thing going here accurately. And now notice there I can click and start creating new points along here. So that's kind of nice too, to have that feature. And let's just keep it along the line here. Let's just try to keep this fairly smooth here. Oops. Control Z if you accidentally do that. Okay. And again, we're just making some extra points along here. And my pen tool got deselected there, so just go back and reselect your tool if it gets deselected. And I think if we go about right here, maybe. That might be a good way to go, right there. Okay. And we're looking pretty good there. Let's do another point there. Right there. Yeah, that should work fine. Okay. Maybe one there, one here. And Control Z if you accidentally select the whole thing. Okay, make sure your pen tool gets selected again. Sometimes it deselects once you select the whole thing on accident. Okay, we're getting there. About there, maybe. That looks pretty good right there. So, over here, select that. Also, I can go up to my pen tool here and choose the Convert Vertex tool. So if I go to the Convert Vertex tool right here under Pen tool, I could select this, for example, and change that to a more rounded Bezier type curve. I think that's something I showed you last week, but if you need to round out some of the points to get more of the contours of the land, you can always use that Convert Vertex tool underneath the pen tool there. So that looks pretty good. I think I might be able to keep that. And so looking at that now, I can go ahead and close these, turn off my back and my front layers. If I just turn the eyeball off, you'll notice there that the mask in the middle is working fine. So we've got the mask in the middle. We also have the mask in the top layer or the front working. So we're good there. So the final mask we have to draw is for the front layer. Okay, and again, I think the easiest way to do that is to take this middle mask that we created. Okay. And just if you're not sure which one to select, just select masks, choose Control C, and then go to front layer. Just click on the front layer and choose Control V, and notice there the mask has been applied. So very easy in that way. Okay, once you copy your mask from the middle to the front, basically go to the masks keyframes, grab your pen tool, select one of your points there just to deselect it, then grab your selection tool and select all the keyframes that you want to delete. Watch what happens here. If I select all these keyframes and I choose delete, notice there it just creates a straight line. Easy breezy, right? So now I can take these points and drag them down to the bottom here and make my mask for the final. So it's that easy. Okay, so now I'll grab this one and grab this one. And notice there I don't have to make any extras, which is nice. Bring these down, and then it's just a matter of making your final adjustments here. And once I deleted all those keyframes at the top, I don't really need to delete any of these others. I mean, I can, but I don't need to. Okay. All right, so you adjust those. Here, if I want to delete a vertex point, though, I can click on the pen tool, where it says delete vertex tool, just click there. And notice here, watch, I can delete these. So you can also do it one at a time with the delete vertex tool up here. But I just thought I think it's easier just to select all of them. So that looks pretty good. Now here I might convert some of these over here again, make them more rounded. So again, I'll go over to my convert vertex tool, click on a point, and notice there it's already automatically made the whole thing rounder because they were all selected. So I'm going to hit Control Z, and what I'm going to do is grab my delete vertex tool again and delete some of these extra vertices here. Now I'll bring this one down. Let's go back to masks. Again, select a key point. There we go. And then move that over. So again, you can delete a bunch of keyframes at once, or you can delete one at a time using the delete vertex tool. Okay, and then again, if you use the convert vertex tool here, you can go in and you can select certain keyframes and you can adjust them to be more smooth Bezier-like curves. or angular, depending on what you're going for. So again, you draw these handles out, you can really start to make things more rounded. Okay, so that's that. That looks pretty good right there. I think I might be able to live with that. And then maybe bring this up a little bit. So again, let me grab my pen tool and just move these up a little bit, maybe. Not sure if that's in the valley, or I guess we'll bring that down. Let's leave that alone. Something like that, and I think we're good to go. Okay, and then we can, again, you can do your final adjustments, make some extra vertices here. That looks pretty good. I think I can live with that. So again, if I turn off the top two, you can see that they're all working now. So we have 3 separate layers all masked off the way we want them to. And then the next step will be to animate this thing, and I'll show you how that works. Okay, once we have all 3 of our masks drawn and ready to go, the next step is to scale on these. So we're going to animate these at slightly different rates. So it appears that we're doing a zoom in the real space, or as close to that as we can. And in the foreground, usually when we're seeing movement in front of us, the foreground will move toward us a little faster, the middle ground will follow, and then the background's probably the slowest. The objects that are farthest away give that illusion. So I'll start with the foreground here. So I'm going to go to front. And what we do is we click on the layer, and we open up the layer by clicking that little arrow to the left of the title. And we're going to do a scale transformation now. So I'm going to click make sure your scrub key is at the beginning. Click the stopwatch here. And I'm just going to go over to about, so this is a 3-second, 5-second animation. So I'm going to go to 3 seconds on this one. And I'm just going to change these numbers right here. So I'm going to scale both the width and the height at the same rate. I'm going to scale from 7.4 to 8.4 in this next spot. So I'm only going up by 1, by a factor of 1. So I'm going to type in 8.4 here. And then over here, and if you notice here, a keyframe is being created there. Instead of 9.8, I'm going to change this to 10.8. And so we have an even distribution of scaling from 7.4 to 8.4, and then from 9.8 to 10.8. And so this is what we get in our scale there. So you can see the front layer scaling up. And let's say, well, that's not really working. You can move these keyframes as well. Here, I can take this and move it over a little closer to the end if we need to. So those keyframes can be moved. And what I can do, what makes this really easy, is I can take these keyframes, for example, these scale keyframes. I can select these by drawing a selection around both. Choose Control-C to copy. And I can go to my middle layer now and Control-V to paste them. And now you can see both layers are expanding at the same rate. So what I basically did is just copied the keyframes I already created and pasted them in here. However, since this is the middle ground, I want this one to go a little bit slower. So I'm going to move this, Control-Z, just select this one keyframe right here in the middle and move that over to about 4 seconds, maybe a little more. Hit home on my keyboard and play it, and you can see the middle layer scaling up a little slower. However, we still have to make some adjustments on these key points, so we'll do that. And then now I can take these keyframes right here, Control-C, copy them after I select them, and paste those into the back layer, Control-V. And then in the back layer, we're going to move this more to 5 seconds. Control-Z. You don't want to move both keyframes, right? So click off both keyframes to deselect, grab just this one and move it over to 5 seconds. So that one will keep scaling there toward the end. Okay, so I think the front one is scaling a little too quickly. So I'm going to move this one over a little bit. And let's go back home, try it again. You can see how they separate there. So what I'm going to have to do is probably click on the middle layer and expand these points out. So what I'm going to do is try to do this all at once. So I'm going to grab my pen tool, select one key point, and then go ahead and grab my selection tool and select all of those points right here, and then just bring them all down kind of at the same time, like that. Okay, so let's try that now. Let's see how that's looking. You can see that gap is no longer there. It's much better. And again, with these keyframes at the end, if I move these closer to the beginning keyframes, that'll speed the process up. However, I do want the animation to continue. But let's say if I moved them over here, for example, watch how much faster it'll zoom. Okay, so now watching it, you can see how it zooms much faster and then stops there. But I want this to kind of continue out throughout the whole animation. So this will be the slowest one in the background. The middle ground will move a little quicker to the to catch the other one, and then the foreground will be the fastest, slightly fastest. And again, I think we can do this just at slightly different rates and make it work. Okay, there we go. So let's try that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, and once you have it the way you like it, then you can save it out. So let's render this thing out. Go up to Composition, add to Render Queue like always. Instead of lossless, where it says Output Module, you're going to click on the word lossless. AVI is fine, or MP4, or whatever selection you have. I'm going to do AVI. You want to select a video codec here. Again, I'm just going to go with Intel. See how that works. And then click OK. And then output, we're going to call this 4-your last name. I'm going to use my last name here, Acker, but you want to use your last name. And just tell it, computer, where to save it. Click Save. Do your final render. Okay, and once that's done, you can find your movie on here. Here's mine. You can right-click on it and open it with your favorite media player. I'll just use VLC. And there you can see the zoom happening. It looks pretty good. So that's basically how it works. You're creating an artificial zoom on a still photo by separating it into 3 parts on 3 different layers. And you're animating or zooming those 3 layers at slightly different rates to create the illusion of being in the 3D scene itself.